Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Lake, we really appreciate what you're trying to do in the reform and really appreciate you being here. You know, my question focused on, I know some of my colleagues and the public observers are really concerned about what's happening in the USAGM and are unhappy about what seems to be reducing its capacity to communicate with foreign national populations around the world. Of those, you know, Chinese, North Koreans, Cubans, Venezuelans, Russians, and Iranians. They further claim that our reduction in withdrawal from the broadcasting spaces will create a vacuum that these other governments, many of which are communist governments, will be happy to fill. I'm not sure that I agree with that at all, but I would ask you, how would you respond to these critics for your current efforts to consolidate broadcasting efforts?
We can't continue to spend money the way we have in the federal government. There have to be ways that we can reduce the spending. And President Trump has determined that this is an agency that we can reduce the spending. We don't need to be broadcasting in all of these languages. We need to be more nimble and focus on areas where the U.S. government and where the United States needs to get a message out to people. And I think we can do a better job at it when we're nimble and smaller. And we have proof of that because our Persian team that came to work when the bombs dropped on Saturday and the president did his address. We sprung into action, we got the message out, and they said, in a way, it was easier to do that because it wasn't such a big group.
I understand that, and that makes it more nimble, and you said that in earlier comments, and so that's very much appreciated. So do you think the United States needs to fund the international broadcasting operations into all of these and other countries in order to influence those populations? Do you think we have the ability to influence populations, and getting that information to those populations is worthwhile?
I think we have the ability. Information it can be used to influence people in many different forms, whether it be through social media, and governments are doing this. They're seeding narratives on social media. It's how things are done. China's doing it, Russia's doing it, America's doing it. The question is, do we need to spend the money that we are spending? Do we need to spend nearly $1 billion? Should we be spending hard-earned tax dollars supporting and sponsoring an Afghan cricket team? Should we be putting $100,000 towards sponsoring an Afghan cricket team? Is that the best use of the money? Is that what we're supposed to do with it, or are we supposed to be telling America's story abroad? There's so much misuse of public dollars in this agency that it needs to be scrapped, and we need to salvage what we can. But it's really like a rotten piece of fish. And you're looking at it and you're saying, is there anything we can pull out of here and eat? And it's best to just scrap the whole thing and start over. And I think that's the way we should go forward. That's my personal opinion.
You know, you touched on something that's dear to my heart. I never forget in the actions that I take here that someone back home is working hard to pay the taxes, to put the light bill on, and to make sure we have an office like this. And then we need to have the responsibility to oversight to make sure those dollars that are going to other countries and other places are being used efficiently and effectively. And so I really admire your approach to that. One last question. What do you really think? You know, I've heard you mention social media and some of these other aspects. What do you think is our best way forward? Do we focus more on social media, or do we, how's our best way forward for trying to communicate? You know, different countries have different ways and different access to different things, but social media is becoming stronger all the time. So what's your opinion of that situation?
I think we have to move further away from, like I said, doing 1990s style television. I mean, you know, you look at President Trump communicates with the world with a simple tweet. And it's very effective, and hundreds of millions of people hear what he has to say. Joe Rogan, a one-man show, reaches hundreds of millions of people. We don't need thousands of people to tell America's story. People are telling America's story on social media. We can do it, as I said, in a more nimble way and focus on ways that we're telling it appropriately. And right now, as I said, the pro-Iranian regime coverage that's come out of this, the pro-CCP coverage that's come out of Voice of America. This thing has gotten very rotten, and we've had pro-Russian coverage coming out. We've hired Russian spies. Radio Free Europe nearly hired 20 Russian spies. If not for being tipped off, they would have had 20 Russian spies working in that outlet. And God only knows what kind of damage they could have done. These things are a waste of money. They're spending money like there's no tomorrow. Salaries are out of control. The president of RFE makes more than $320,000, I believe, and then you add all the other leadership in these various grantees. This is a hard-earned taxpayer dollar. And I think about the people who are working hard and barely make ends meet. I think about the overnight truck driver who's doing the overnight shift. I think about the teacher who's working hard and barely has time to come home and spend time with their own kids. I think about the farmer in Iowa who's working long hours and having to pay the government tax dollars. And it's going toward, for God's sakes, a cricket team in Afghanistan, and it's going to hire spies. This is outrageous, and it's got to stop. And thank God for President Trump for having the courage to say—
My time's up, and so I'll yield back.
Chair now recognizes Representative Almo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Lake, for being here. Since its founding to counter Nazi propaganda during World War II, Voice of America has been a beacon of free information in repressive countries. Voice of America's parent agency, the USAGM